This podcast show is for informational and entertainment purposes only. It should not be considered legal, medical, or mental health advice. The views and opinions expressed do not necessarily reflect the official policy or position of this podcast show. It is not intended to malign any religion, group, club, organization, business, individual.
Tonight, we're out to have a conversation, just us with you, and you are welcome to chime in on the live stream. And I thought it was great. So we took a few 3-4 weeks off, and that was for a couple reasons. One was kind of an existential crisis that I've been going through, which is like, okay, what else do we have to say here? Why I like doing a YouTube channel. It's pretty fun, and it's helped me a lot in my unpacking journey. But like, when does all this end? And
when is enough talking about Landmark enough?
Exactly, and we're all instigators of that. So anyways, we're going to talk about taking a break tonight, like what we got out of taking the break. And I think it's really valuable. I always start these shows with an acknowledgement of Anne. Mm-hmm. And I just think that what this conversation, which she sparked, and what this conversation has opened up is so meaningful in so many different ways. And one of the things that it's been teaching me is to stop and critically think. So in the title tonight, if you're watching for that reason, if you see our video, so I want to talk about the Honda CRV's engine failure. That's what I want to talk about, and how that ties into going through life, not letting yourself get exploited.
Yeah.
So there I was last week, and I get a call from Tim, and Tim's car has completely died out on the freeway. Now, a little context. Tim, my partner, who is just the most loving, amazing person, 4 years ago, bought this Honda CRV, paid cash, saved up all his little money, all the sacrifices that take to spend like 40 grand on a car, right? Yeah. And Tim is not, Tim is about, like most of us, is in the middle class and probably near the lower end of the middle class. So this is somebody who really had the discipline to get him something. And why does somebody buy a Honda? Is because it's reliable. So how is it 4 years down the road, right after you cross your warranty, that it quits working? The engine completely fails. Like, that makes no sense. Now, I have been going through this whole unpacking rabbit hole life after Landmark, where it's like every time there's a new problem, I have to research every piece of it and get all the possible facts that I can possibly get, because I am not going to be duped again in life or misled. I'm going to have all the information and informed consent. And here's what ended up happening in this thing. And I want people to know this. It's fascinating. To me, it's just fascinating. To you, it might mean nothing. But if you put yourself, I'm really getting, people say, oh, well, Landmark is just like any other business. And I go, yeah, except none of the other businesses claim not to be like every other business. That's not their deal. But here's what I learned. So first of all, he had a warranty. But unless you make them use it, they're going to pretend like it doesn't exist. That was the first thing that I learned. We're still going through that with them. I mean, that's then, because we made such a stink in a good way. We were obviously, you can take the Graduate out of Landmark, but you can't take Landmark out of the Graduate. Like, I always have to be gracious. I always have to be understanding. I always have to, because God forbid, what if these people wound up in my seminar at the car dealership? So we were awesome with them, but what they ended up disclosing to us is that this thing, and this is why, if you're a car person and you stumbled upon our podcast, I want you to know this, is that what they discovered is What they told us is that Honda called them in July, and this is an ongoing issue in their cars that they are having. You're not crazy. See, everybody was interacting with us like we were crazy. Like, he mustn't have changed the oil. He mustn't have done the service, the service agreements. And I think that's how they game you to make money off of you. But either way, they just were like, you did everything right. And this is an actual issue in our company. But do you think they say that to you straight up at the beginning? No, they asked him for $10,000 and basically like, yeah, we don't think you have a warranty. So my point is that took hours. That took YouTube, Reddit, every kind of, like every Google search available to get all of the facts, to find all of the information, till I could go into that dealership and actually be an educated person and understand about, I'm going to say it wrong now. I could have told you last week what it exactly was. Oil dissolution, something, but basically what the lead mechanic at Honda said was that people are not getting, Honda's not recommending the oil gets changed enough. People are just following the little sticker. Does that remind you of anything? Just following along, going along in your taking your steps to freedom, and doing what you're supposed to do. And what they believe, the people who work on the cars, is they believe that your oil should be changed at 50%, whatever that thing is, not 15, and that every 3,000-4,000 miles, not every 9 or 10, which is what they recommend. But if they recommend that, they're out of compliance with the air quality, the government coming down on them about air quality. So the whole thing breaks down there, and them trying to be compliant. But their reputation is that they're reliable, so they don't want to sell out their reputation. So it's like a whole mess. So if you're a person who runs into this kind of issue, you are not insane. It's not you, it's them. I was going to name the channel. We named it, How Did I Get Here? But another good question is, because that's what you end up thinking. How did I get here? I did everything right. I don't drive my car that much. I do all the right things. How does this thing break down when you spent all that money on it and nobody seems to understand the whole situation? Well, I almost named this channel, It's Not You, It's Them. That was the other idea I had for it. So if you feel like you're crazy, it's not you, it's them. And I wanted to share about that because I believe in living my non-landmark life, that I just give way too much people in life. It's a background of relatedness I have created of just like I swear, I just think the best of everybody all the time.
Yeah.
And it almost occurs like it's out of integrity to be suspicious. So I go to school and I run into the same thing, where the school I'm going to, I did part of why we took a break is because I just started school. So I'm going full time, 12 credits in the evening. The school is designed to support working adults. It's their claim to fame since the 70s. It's a state college here, a state university here in Minnesota. And I got a scholarship to go. So I'm like, that's like a miracle. So I'm like all about it. However, the advisors, when I did my application, all that stuff and got set up, they didn't tell me any of the things that I would need. And I end up in these classes, and these 3 classes are actually classes I didn't need to be in. So what did I do? I get on YouTube, I get on Reddit, I get on I actually had to learn how the whole system of college and how to figure out how all the credits work. I was told the class I'm in was going to do that. It does not. It's a great class. We read Outliers by Malcolm Gladwell. That was fascinating. I just had to understand. So what I realized is that I had to be the author of my own education. And nobody's going to say this is the curriculum for living, just follow it. Like that's not life outside of the landmark world. Just check all these boxes, then you're there. It's nobody's going to hand it to me. And I think that's a big piece of navigating life in this new world where there's no coach there. There's no one tell you just do this. There's no one who's going to, and it's so freeing, actually.
Yeah.
It's freeing because when I started getting this, I'm like, oh, there's no assumptions. Assume nothing.
Mm-hmm.
Be skeptical. Critically think through this choice. How does this apply to me? I mean, I love this. This is great. This is like so more empowering than just kind of going on and going, well, it'll all work out,
Yeah.
I know I'm taking a lower paid job, but I'm changing the world and it'll all work out because that's how possibility works. What you give to the world comes back to you. I don't know if that's true or if I believe in that anymore. So anyways, I just kind of went off. We could have called this section Go Off, Brian. But Eric, what do you want to say about everything I was just kind of going off about?
Well, I've really enjoyed kind of watching you go through all of this, and I feel like we've had this conversation on the phone, and so probably express some of my CRV frustration with you kind of on the phone with you, but you're absolutely right. That is like life outside. There's no like manual like at Landmark. There's a manual for everything, right? Everything's articulated, and if you didn't do it by design, then you just have to go back and look at the design, and it doesn't necessarily look like that out here in the real world. And with that comes a little more stress, but at the same time, like there's more freedom, and you make a mistake, it's your mistake, like you did with the school, right? Now you're in it for these classes, and you might have done it differently had you known about it previously. So
yes,
yeah.
One of the things I'm really loving, and I love what people, I love, one of the things that I love is, I mean, it's, in reality, I talked to the professors, I interacted with people, and I really got, they made a mistake.
Mm-hmm.
And normally the way I'd be about that is like, okay, I forgive. But instead, I was just like, okay, well, now everybody needs to stop to help me out.
Yeah.
And to work with me. And in that Malcolm Gladwell book, Outliers, he makes a big distinction about where you come from may have more to do, like your circumstances have way more to do with your success than this kind of branded idea of individualism and how anybody can make it anywhere kind of idea. Yeah. And one of the things studies have proven is that people who come from poorer, lower class, there's the studies that they go through, the lower people who come from, like I do, from like a lower income families, their parents view educators as like authorities. So often they will not challenge or jump in with the educational process of their children, but middle class and wealthy people do. And so they see it as like it's their job, and they actually train their kids to know how to interact with authority types at a much more like even level. And so what I walked away from there is like this possibility of being an advocate. And I kind of got cause in the matter of where I just kind of delegate that authority over to other people.
Yeah.
And I'm a pretty strong personality. Yeah. Or I just trust. I just trust. Oh, well, so yeah, you're right. And with a real dose of that, I have, this belief system that everybody is out to do well, like do what right by you.
Yep. Yep.
I don't necessarily think everybody's out to do right by you. I think people are, I think in the already always, I'm going to start talking landmark seminar leader, in the already always condition of what it means to be a human being. People are out to get ahead, get one past you, get what they need. And and I think that's part of why unpacking landmark and seeing things like how much Werner Erhard made over all those years is so disheartening, because I did believe that that would never happen at Landmark. Maybe things were a little intense or Landmark was a little weird, but not that people wouldn't be true to what they were telling me. Yeah. All right, good. Well, how was your break? What do you want to talk about in the world of taking a break?
It was really good to just kind of take a break. It just like a lot happened really fast. The whole Landmark filing for bankruptcy in the US happened, and then the Alan Kahn interview happened with Anne, and it's just like all of this stuff happened probably within like a 2-week period, and there was like outrage, rightfully, from people. And so it was good to just step away for a sec. And I I've been out of the Landmark ecosystem for a number of years. Like my job like is pretty in a completely different industry, different field, so I don't really traffic in that world much. And so it was nice to step away. And in that, I also, in the deconstructing of this whole deconstructing Landmark and talking about getting exploited and the whole thing, for those of you who don't know, I work in real estate, and part of what I do in real estate is we redevelop homes. So I buy distressed properties with a group of other investors, and we fix them up and we make them look beautiful, and we put them back on the market. And there was an investor that I've been working with, a client of mine, for a while, and I started to feel like I was being taken advantage of. And it was almost like I started to get the experience like back when I was like a staff member, where it was always like my fault for something not getting done on time. And I started to feel like this guilt for not like being in communication all the time. And like obsessing over like minute things that didn't really need to be obsessed about. And what's so great about this conversation that we've been having is I just sent a communication, and I said, look, I've enjoyed, but essentially saying I've enjoyed the time that we've worked together, and I think it's time for us to part ways. And I wish you nothing but the best, but I'm going to pull my money out of this deal, and I'm going to go, and we're going to go work on something else. And it took so much for me to have that conversation with her. And her thing was basically like she thought I was crazy, and mind just a Landmark graduate, and as well, so that it's like adds another layer of like, well, what's incomplete, and let's get whatever needs to be complete. But there was none of that needed to happen for me. I was just kind of done with that working relationship, and I was ready to move on and do something else. And so that happened during the break. And I've just been spending a lot more time with my family, my like inner kind of nucleus, which is something that is really nourishing for me. My daughter's second birthday happened, and we just kind of had like a small little party. So it's just been nice. It's been nice to just not be after our last call, our last interview we had with Rick Ross. And I think you and I shared that sentiment when he says, sometimes you just got to move on. And I was like, yeah, well, I had moved on before, but just him saying that uh was good. And now I feel like I'm ready to just like get back into it and start sharing and start holding people's feet to the fire. Like you said, you know, when we were around Landmark, when people start talking about other companies, like for example, in real estate and whatnot, there's never any conversation about we're here to change the world or make a difference or, you know, all this other stuff. So there's none of that happening, but at Landmark it was. So when things happen that are kind of you know, out of the norm, and people say, well, that happens everywhere. Well, it shouldn't have happened at Landmark given what they claim. So
Yeah.
anyway, that's kind of how my break's been, and it's been nice.
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the things is a lot of companies, I mean, on one hand, there are a lot of companies who are out to change the world and they are doing it. You know, I have a client, or I had a client, and he's a neuroscientist, and he's made a device that you place on your head, and it works on the neuroplasticity in your brain and reduces symptoms of depression. And he's all about empowering people in their mental health without medication. And the FDA is in the middle of approving his device.
Mm.
And he wakes up every morning out to change the world. And I think what we're doing here, I think what Anne is doing is really huge, not just for our community of people, but for people to understand how these things like coercive control, undue influence, loading the language, how all of these things come together and how you can navigate the world of empowering yourself and yet at the same time not be exploited.
Yeah.
And you know, I was looking at the word exploited today and I read about 80 different definitions and the history of exploitation and what all that comes from. At the heart of the definition, it is in the first definition in almost every dictionary, it says being taken advantage of.
Yeah.
So then I looked at, like, you know, I was a center manager for about 7-8 years. So I took my salary during that time and I averaged, you know, I worked as my job, not seminar leading on top of it, but my job, I probably put in about, I mean, 70 would be pretty much common, like what was expected of you as a center manager, but it would go more than that. It would usually be 70 to 80 hours a week. And I got paid on average about $12 an hour when you average that out. If I was being paid hourly and I got overtime, I'd even have to be making less. Now, given, you know, is that knowing that Werner Erhard was making, you know, was making millions during that same period, while I'm making $12 an hour, it did shift my view about whether I was exploited or not. Because yes, I chose, you know, I chose to be to have that job, but I didn't do it with informed consent. In fact, I did it with misinformation. I'm pretty like okay with that now, like have moved on from that, whatever you want to call it. I've forgiven that to some degree. I'm no longer as upset as I was. I'm not upset at all, actually, because I've had to accept that what the critics have said about Landmark, that it's a business and it's designed for people to keep bringing people in. And that's at the heart, you know, that's actually true. And it was designed to make people wealthy. And that's when I got that that's a fact, then I could let go of my own upset with myself and with the you know, the people who because I was mad at the people who have long been gone from Landmark, but I looked up to them and they shared and created with me that whole world. And then I did it with other people that nobody's making any money around here. That's just not a real thing, and it wasn't true.
Mm-hmm.
There's all sorts of ways people have made money off of there without it being, like it's just not an accurate statement. So anyhow, and I'm sorry about my lighting tonight. I just finished school and I ran home, and this is what you get. Bad audio visual. So anyhow,
and it's outside or a normal time. I'm, it's getting late here, so I'm outside. I usually do our show outside because I'm loud. I'm a loudspeaker, and I don't want to wake my daughter up because she goes to bed early. And I'm wearing a sweater because it's freezing here. Yeah. But anyway, it's what it is.
And some people are making notes about Landmark. They said, the shady way, not illegal. They split pay between hourly people and overtime, while telling people they had salaries. That's another way of doing it. Like, yeah, this is your total, but you're really an hourly employee, but you're being paid to work 62 hours a week. So you're going to make $50,000, but really it's overtime.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Correct.
Yes. Yeah. And
well, the exploitation kind of happens everywhere, but I think what's been so good about this has been when you say like that you've kind of moved on, that you've done the work to realize that we were exploited as Landmark staff members. It was just kind of how it happened. We were lied to. We were led to believe something else, and so now we're out here and we can see it. We're in a conversation with somebody else, and if it looks in any way exploitative or like we're going to get taken advantage of, guess what? We don't have to participate.
Correct.
We don't have to stick around. We can move on. We can go do something else.
Yeah, I agree.
And I had to relearn myself. I had to relearn this whole thing about value and making money and getting paid. I mean, I remember getting paid for one thing, getting paid like an entire year's salary at Landmark and just like being completely floored. It happens. You can actually work half as hard and make more money than we ever did at Landmark staff. But
Eric, we're not doing it for the money. Nobody's making money here. We're doing it to transform what it means for all of us human beings to be a human being. When I did the forum, there I was sitting in my chair and I was crying. And why I was crying is because I realized I had been being right. And I no longer needed to be right about everything. And then I got on the phone and I called my sister and I said, I'm so sorry for making you right. So Eric, I think you should really be on staff, because this is something special here.
Yeah, something special. No, it's a new era here.
You're not going to become a millionaire, but you are going to be part of something so bigger than yourself. And the training is amazing, Eric. I mean, the training is unbelievable. In fact, after you're on staff, you will be able to do about just anything. You could probably run a small country. It's true. So, I know you have some things to work out and some budgetary things, and you'll probably have to get a few roommates to make this work. But I'm pretty sure, you can do it because we're standing for something, right?
I remember being told that whoever I marry, at one point somebody told me that if I ever decided I was going to get married, then I needed to be married to someone who was the person that was going to make the money in the relationship, because that was never going to be me. So, it's like, talk about like ingraining that into your, into the way you think. And I just,
it's also super exciting to date somebody in that situation and be like, hi, how much money do you make? And do you want to let me work all the time, but you go make the money? And how,
I'll see you on Sundays when I'm exhausted.
How do you enroll somebody? You have to enroll somebody who is deeply in as you. And I mean that word enroll, because they have to be in. You both need to know about enrollment. So that is a way to exploit, I believe. I've been looking at different ways. I think one of the ways you exploit people in that system also is this being up to something bigger than yourself, but the system is gamed to not be successful at it. So what do I mean? Bring everybody together for events all around the world, declare this whole huge future for humanity, and then, just kind of like let the whole thing disappear. But you haven't really let the whole thing disappear. What's happened is Werner Erhard behind the scenes has changed his mind about what is the real future of the work. So like when they did LE 2020, he wrote transformation possibility enrollment document with people. They thought that was the answer. It was in this set of documents that we had. And one of them is there's a new technology that's going to be groundbreaking. So they thought that this technology he wrote was going to be it. But then, and by the way, a lot of us spent countless hours implementing that with people and with ourselves. And it's personally one of my favorite things that they ever came up with. But whatever. One day it's over. Like this paired chair, that's over. You may have just spent, hundreds of hours for years and years and years, but we're going to complete that in a paired chair because, there's a new future. And really what that's about is now we have this thing called direct access. And that work is the brilliant work that we have been, Hank, that's my dog barking. And that's the future that is just going to be so, and this is this new technology. And then, no. Oh, sorry. So now we're going to do this whole thing about how we exist to empower and enable people. And then we're going to do direct access isn't it? It's the leadership course and being out here. And what was so fascinating about working with Rick Ross, if you go back, I think a lot of the interviews we've done have so much more value in them than we even realized while we were doing that. And there's one with Seb Brody where he's talking about how he was practicing for years being out here. And then they're like, yeah, Werner says that we're screwing it up, so that's over.
Yep.
Now that I have learned from Rick Ross, Rachel Bernstein. See, that's called right there narcissism. How does Werner Erhard know that everyone is screwing that up in the entire organization? He's supposedly not involved with it. So there Seb is missing his family, sacrificing for this cause, believing in it, not getting paid for it, into this future in which human beings could be out here with each other, which ultimately, Eric, means that we go through our lives and we think, you know what, Eric's over there and I'm over here. But no, that's a myth. We're connected. We are actually out here in the space between us is where we really are. That's where the real you is, like your soul. Yeah. That's it. So the point is, how would Werner Erhard know that?
Yeah.
That's a culture of narcissism. When those things clicked for me, it made all the times, where it's like, you need to go study this, you need to go do this, you need to and you just move heaven and earth to do these 85 things. And then in one day, it's like, yeah, we're not doing that anymore. That's classic narcissism.
Yep.
Right there.
And how many times we were dealt with about how we weren't being that on the all staff calls with Mark Spiritos, and
how does he know?
Yeah,
they walk into those calls like, you're not doing this, you're not, so you could get
over there.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, over there in that center, we know what's really going on over there because you're performing.
You got a bunch of homeless people assisting, like this constant. Already, it's like it. So you live in that world, and then me, I'm always trying to do, like, I hear that, and then I try to do better or prove that no, it isn't that way. So you live in that system, but that's all exploitation because you are literally consuming people's lives.
Yeah,
and then just throwing it out. you know,
Yeah. So
and
that's another way of exploiting for sure.
redesigning and doing creating strategic design technology, creating mission statements, getting everybody practicing them to the point where most people who have assisted at Landmark could probably tell you Landmark's mission verbatim, but not their own companies that they own. You know, like that, like to get it in that and then just be that cavalier with it and with people's, you know, not to just say paired share or just to let the thing fall to the wayside and not say anything. Now, to me, that lacks integrity. It's
Yeah.
not what others would expect you to do. We'd expect you to stick with it. But I assert behind the scenes why it's not being fulfilled on is because the real intention behind the whole joint is to have Werner's work and Werner's, you know, reputation and Werner be this solid thing in the world. So that would be exploitation. And when you go to the car dealership, at least it's common knowledge that car dealerships are going to try to rake you. And so it's not like anybody's over there saying no. They do it in some ways. You know, they do it in the same way Landmark
Hey,
does.
Brian.
Go ahead. Yeah.
Well, I mean, Warner was a used car salesman, wasn't he?
Yeah.
So there you have it.
Correct.
No coincidence there.
Well, I finally
raking people for their transformation.
Oh yeah,
millions of dollars.
Exactly, and all the hard sell criticisms of Landmark, yeah, all of that. Used cars, multi-level marketing, you know, put the kind of like door-to-door sales where you stick your foot in the door. You know, and then all the manipulation in that, like, oh, but at the end, say to the person, I will rip this contract up if you do not want this after everything we did. You know, so the person feels noble that how they were selling. That's why they would do registration checklists with us. Like so that you feel like you did a good thing, you know, in keeping those numbers. The point is that it's a con. The selling a program is not a con. Having people sell a program and telling them they're not salespeople and saying it's not a sale and then training them to operate like a military style sales force is a con.
Yeah.
But just selling your great weekend, I mean, seminar you put together, not a con.
Yeah.
So I think that's what exploitation is about.
Yeah.
And I'm just kind of like, I just choose to not live my life that way. I mean, I'm sure I'll get exploited or I'm sure people will try to take advantage or whatever. But
it happens. Like, it just happened to me. So it happens.
Yeah. How did it happen to you, Eric?
Well, we were working on a deal, so I don't need to educate everybody on how, you know, a redevelopment works, but just really easy. You buy a house for a certain amount, and then you have a certain budget, a certain construction budget, and you have a certain budget for your holding costs, right? Because you have to hold this property for, you know, depending on how long you've anticipated. So let's just say 6 months. It's going to take you like 3 months of construction and 3 months to market it and sell the house. Well, usually, the way it works is you have a set construction budget. So that construction budget includes labor and materials. Well, in this situation, the construction budget was getting way super inflated, and to the point where the net profit after, you know, it was all said and done was like close to nothing. But what we had anticipated was a different outcome. And so if the construction was taking longer, so the construction budget was getting extended, which meant that the project was now getting extended, which meant our holding costs were getting extended. While meanwhile, the person, this person who was managing all the construction was getting paid all the way for all these extra costs. So, I'm just keeping it really simple because I don't need to get into all the details, but I'm just giving you an example of it happens, and it happens, and it happens to people like you and I. And thankfully, I have people around me, and I have been around enough, and maybe I've been exploited enough to be like, wait a minute, this doesn't make sense. Why is this taking so long? Something's not right. And when this is a good one. When you ask and somebody doesn't want to share openly or transparently about what's really going on, or when they get defensive about what's really going on, when you start to ask questions, that's a big red flag. I mean, notice how we started to poke around, like, why are like Landmark's companies and our finances and our ESOP and everything so complicated to understand? You can't just like ask a straight question, because it's like, well, this money's here, but so meanwhile, Landmark supposedly has like tens of millions of dollars in cash reserves, but they claim that they don't have any money. So, it's the same thing. So I started to ask questions, and things there was no straight answer. There was like, well, let's just focus on let's just go to work on a different project, and I think,
love that.
that, yeah, go ahead.
No, well, you said one of the people in our chat said that's huge, Eric. Before you started deconstructing Landmark, I think it's likely you would have not noticed the issues in your business.
Yeah, I mean, completely, because you just kind of trust so openly. And you, like you said, part of what we get trained to do is that you kind of see the best in people, and not that you shouldn't see the best in people, because I think that's fine, but it's being able to see those little red flags along the way and listen to ourselves. I think
Well, at
that's just
Landmark,
like
it's
super
also
important.
no, what you're saying is really great. I never saw this before, but at Landmark, is the word binary, where it's like you're either an asshole or you're really the greatest thing in the whole world. So you're not really trained to relate to people in a more subtle manner. That that because people are not their attributes. Wow, my camera is crazy tonight. People are not their attributes.
Yeah.
So people are nothing. They're no thing. And so people will become around you the way you listen to them. But I don't necessarily agree with that anymore. I started I got a new job. So I took a corporate job, no longer a working at home. I hate working at home. I had to get honest about that. So I took a corporate job, and I just started yesterday. So
how's it been, by the way?
What's that?
How's it been? I mean, you've spent your entire life working at this this company, Landmark, and now here you are at this new corporate job, different environment. None of these people have ever done the work. What's that been like?
Well, it's been a couple things. So one thing is we have two the company's about I think it's I didn't do the math on revenue, but I believe it's about 2 to 3 times larger than Landmark. And so but I was surprised at how much simpler everything is than at Landmark. One of my complaints was that there were so many policies and rules for doing things at Landmark. It's like I always felt like I could not, it was hard to get things done. And so I thought this is fascinating, that this is, but I also realized that there's a lot of the reasons for that is all the lawsuits we've been reading about that Landmark has had over the years. You know, I mean, they've been involved in so many lawsuits that there's, I never used the term CYA, but there's just a lot of CYA in most of those policies, you know, so their staff doesn't end up suing them, you know, for things like people have sued them for. So I thought that was really fascinating, just in the comparison. As a business, it's weird. It's like a lot of, like, as I'm working in the system that they use, it looks almost like Lisa, the Landmark system. And, you know, like
Lisa, for those of you who don't know, it's like Landmark CRM, basically.
Well, it's not a CRM, because that would be too, you wouldn't need 8 binders if they had a CRM, but whatever they had, or spreadsheets now. But it is but Lisa is the Landmark Information Systems Architecture. It's where they keep all their data and how to deal with things, and they put registrations in like that. So a lot of the reports and everything, all of that made sense. So I thought, okay, good. I do have training as a regional director. This is what I did for a living. If you peel back all of the interventive coaching and all the different kinds of, you know, the different, you know, like all that kind of more culty stuff, was basically, I was a regional director for a company. And that's what my new company is. So I was like, that part made a lot of sense. What's exciting about it is that I get to create the vision for my office. I manage there's about 100 people altogether. Some are part-time, some are full-time. So that reminds me of staff as well. There's the people who work in the office with me, and then there's the people out in the field. So it's just, I really think it's going to be a great job for me. And I think even the person that I have to have that conversation with, it's going to be a really productive and great conversation for her. But I just, I mean, talk to me in a few weeks. But part of why we didn't do the channel the last couple of weeks was simply because, you know, I just been dabbling with the idea of, like, that what Rick Ross said, like, moving on is an act of forgiveness. Like, maybe it's time just to live life. But I still think we're doing this tonight as kind of like a short catch up, kind of, you know, let everybody know we still exist kind of episode. But I believe there are more stories to tell, and there's more stories to tell in the greater conversation about, you know, going through life being an advocate for yourself, and the warning signs of coercive control, informed consent, knowing, you know, I was thinking on my ride back from school, one of the hardest parts about going to school right now is that, sorry, I noticed our comments. People have good things to say. One of the things about going to school that I have found so fascinating is I actually am in most conversations, and I have to literally unpack everything I learned at Landmark to be able to understand what the scientific research has told people. And it's always different than what I think it is. So I'm like, we were talking about context, and I had to do all this stuff to actually get what context is, because most terms that are used in leadership dynamics, responsibility, integrity, enrollment, participation, communication, that I've lived in this world where all these terms have been redefined. And it's like, oh, everything that I think that this isn't what it is. I've been, and there's something I think I can now see how that is the criticism. I never believed it. It took me until maybe a few weeks ago to get that that's a form of mind control or influence. Because I literally walk through life thinking context is, who I am, that I am at the level of self. Like I have this whole diluted word salad relationship with context. So I can't be in a conversation with people in an academic setting and discuss things because how I'm hearing everything they're saying, they're using similar words, but I'm filled up with all of these, grandiose, pompous ideas. And I still don't understand. I've never understood why they couldn't have just been new words. The English, they add words to the English language all the time.
It was all intentional.
Yeah, because it breaks you down. It starts confusing you, and then you go, "Yeah, I don't have any integrity," and then you live in that, or do I? And and it's all breaking people down. So I now am 100%. Well, I shouldn't say 100%, but I'm now really convinced at the invalidity of coaching people like that.
Right. Yeah. So good.
Yeah. One of the people in the comments says this is good. It says it creates an isolated environment in which people can be manipulated and controlled. And then it says, or use words the way they are defined. And I get that. So, anyways, tonight I don't know how powerful of a episode tonight is, but we wanted to touch base.
It's just a quick catch up, We've had people messaging us and asking us, "Hey, where you been? We miss, watching you guys." So it was we just want to do a brief catch up, and look, I still have a lot more to talk about, and I know Ryan does too, and we're not done.
No.
But this is just a little fun kind of
we need to do something. I mean, I started a new job, so I was trying to stay a little bit on the DL. Make sure that gets going. Because this stuff gets really controversial and social media blows up and it's intense. So I needed a little space. I started school. I'm really proud of myself in doing all that. I am overwhelmed in a good way of taking on these new things. And but there is much more to say. And we do want, if you want to DM me on Messenger and Facebook or put in the comments, but also I'd love to hear from people what you want to hear. And the other thing I want to let you know is that we are discussing, there's a way to do this as a community setup where you can send us stickers and stuff or pay $2 a month. If you're interested in that, contributing to this, because this is, this costs me, I think, about $120 a month to do the channel. And so far, we've not taken any money for it. But I don't want to exploit. I don't want to use this as an opportunity to exploit myself financially. It's important to me not to do that in what we're doing here. I think it would be disingenuous to be like, "Oh, everybody, Landmark did all this bad stuff. Now come pay me and we can go do blah, blah, blah." I think that just is, it's too hypocritical. I don't think I could do it. So, but if you would do that, if you want to DM me and let me know how you feel about that, I think we could have this be sustainable on that level, because our time is valuable and we didn't put any effort into tonight, which you can tell by the value of the conversation. Tonight. But we've got people lined up to be guests. We've got good stuff coming. So anyways, if you have any good ideas, let me know. But I also wanted to say all these things that I said tonight. So whether anybody is really listening or not, or tunes out, fine. But I appreciate you listening through the whole thing. And this is part of the journey that we're all on. All right, Eric, anything you want to close with?
No, that's it. Thank you so much for being here this evening, and we'll see you again soon. Hopefully not, weeks, but we'll see you soon.
Yeah. We're going to try to do this right away. And if you want to be a guest, DM me as well. We've never elicited that, but if you want to be a guest, I always let the guests say what they want to talk about, like what the subject matter is going to be. All right. Thank you. Bye.
All right. Bye.
Please join us live next week at 8 p.m. Central, 6 p.m. Pacific for another cut of this conversation. We want to thank you for watching or listening and appreciate your support. Please share this with those you think it could help. We understand this can be a lot of overwhelming information and emotions can run high. So above all, please be kind to yourself and others. As new information comes to light, you are always free to change your mind and take a different path. That is the power in engaging in the question, how did I get here?